My sister said it with a smile so sweet it almost hid the venom. The kind of smile she only wore when she thought she'd won something. But her words, they froze the room around me. Enjoying your $500,000 trust fund? I didn't know whether to laugh or demand to know why I'd never heard a single word about it. The story follows Mara, a soft-spoken woman in her early 30s who has never lived an extravagant life. Just quiet routines, a rented one-bedroom apartment, and a small job that lets her pay bills by the skin of her teeth. Her older sister, Lillian, is everything she isn't. Polished, wealthy, always composed, always knowing more than she says. When the offhand comment about a mysterious trust fund slips out during a family dinner, Mara's world shifts sideways. The quiet life she thought she understood suddenly feels like a locked room with windows she never noticed. And the one person who holds the key seems determined to keep it hidden. I remember the way the chandeliers hummed in Lillian's dining room, casting their pale gold light across a table that always felt too long for just two people. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and something colder underneath, like a room that wasn't meant to be lived in, only looked at. I sat down across from her, trying to quiet the familiar unease that rose in my chest whenever I stepped into her world. The napkins were folded with sharp angles, the silverware lined like soldiers. Even the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for one of us to break. She looked perfect, of course. She always did. A soft curl tucked behind one ear. A dress that cost more than my rent. A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I told myself to relax, to make the best of this rare dinner. But something about the way she watched me, too closely, too softly, made my skin tighten as if I was being measured. The soup was served. Conversation tiptoed around safe topics. Weather. Work. A neighbor's new baby. Everything felt polished, practiced, layered with a politeness that hurt more than it soothed. I tried to match her tone, but every word I offered seemed to bounce off a wall she'd built years ago. I should have known something was coming. It happened between courses, too casual to be accidental, too sharp to be harmless. She dabbed her mouth with her linen napkin, let her eyes linger on mine, and said, almost sweetly, "So, enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" The words dropped into the room like a stone hitting glass. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. The fork slipped in my hand, clinking against the plate. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. My heart felt like it had jumped sideways inside my chest. "What trust fund?" I managed, the words scraping out of my throat. Her smile stretched wider, thinner. She took a slow sip of wine, her eyes never leaving my face, as if she'd been waiting for that exact reaction. "Oh," she said lightly, "so you really didn't know?" It wasn't the sentence that unnerved me. It was the pleasure in her voice. She sounded like someone watching a secret detonate in slow motion. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Confusion spun inside me so quickly it made me dizzy. "Lillian, I don't understand."
What are you talking about?
She tilted her head, pretending to think. "Father's trust fund," she said. "The one he left for you. $500,000. Although I suppose it's less now, after everything." My stomach twisted at that last part. After everything what? But she wouldn't answer. She just kept watching me, like this was a show she had paid good money to attend. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. The chandelier hum grew louder, as though the lights were leaning in to hear. Even the silverware gleamed differently, each piece reflecting my shock back at me. "I didn't know about any trust fund," I whispered. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Lillian lifted one shoulder in a lazy shrug. "Maybe you weren't supposed to. Maybe someone wanted it that way." My pulse thudded, so hard I felt it in my fingertips. "What do you mean, someone?" I pressed. "Lillian, who knew? Who was handling it?" She gave me a soft, practiced laugh. "That's not my place to say." But it was her place. She'd made it her place. She always did. I felt something inside me splinter, some small, fragile part of my childhood that still believed she protected me. My breath shook as I pushed my chair back a little. "Why are you saying this now?"
I asked.
The question hovered between us, trembling. She didn't answer right away. Instead, She leaned back in her chair, folding her hands neatly in her lap. The candlelight flickered across her face, catching on the faintest trace of satisfaction. Timing, she murmured, is everything. There was nothing kind in her expression now. Nothing sisterly. Only calculation. And maybe something darker. My voice felt small when I spoke again. Did he really leave something for me? Her eyes softened in a way that frightened me more than the smirk had. Mara, she said, as though speaking to a child, he left you so much more than you ever realized. You just never asked the right questions. The words struck like a cold wind. A memory rose without warning me at 18, sitting beside my father's bed weeks before he died, him reaching for my hand with trembling fingers. He tried to tell me something then, something important. But Lillian had come into the room, all brisk and polished, and told him to rest. He'd gone quiet. I never heard the rest. Now that moment felt like a missing puzzle piece. The dining room seemed to tilt slightly. My voice shook. What exactly did he leave me? Lillian, tell me. She lifted her wine again, letting the deep red swirl like something secret and dangerous. $500,000, she said softly. Give or take. But I swallowed hard. I never received anything. I watched her lips curve, slow and deliberate. I know, she said. The silence that followed settled into my bones like winter. Her phone buzzed on the table, but she didn't look at it. She seemed content to let me drown in the moment she'd created. I looked around the room, the polished floors, the expensive art, the perfect glassware, and something inside me shifted. How much of this had come from my father's money? From the money he meant for me? A tremble crawled down my spine. Lillian, I whispered, what did you do? She finally stood, smoothing the front of her dress, as though ready to leave the scene of a crime. But the date doesn't match the school records beside it. Someone rewrote my timeline. Someone changed details so small I never would have noticed them, except now they stand out like scars. I cover my mouth with my hand. What were you hiding? I whisper into the room. What did you take from me? The lamp flickers, once, as if the house is answering. I return to the empty folder, staring at the blank space where a life should have been recorded. A trust fund. $500,000. A father's final gift. All of it should have been here. Instead, there's only absence. Only silence. And Lillian's smirk replaying in my mind. If the trust fund existed and she knew about it, then she didn't just hide it. She stole the truth out of my hands before I ever got the chance to hold it. My pulse thuds painfully at my temples. I think of her elegant home, the expensive art, the way she brushed off my questions tonight like flicking dust from her sleeve. She didn't slip tonight. She let it slip. On purpose.
Why?
Why now? Why mention it with that tone? Half amusement, half threat. A knot twists deep inside my stomach, sharp and certain. Because whatever she's hiding, it's bigger than a missing document. Bigger than an inheritance. Something happened after our father died. Something she buried so carefully that she never expected me to start digging. But tonight, she gave herself away. I gather the papers into my lap, my breath unsteady, my heart pounding as though it's been shaken awake after years of quiet. Something was hidden deliberately. Not lost. Not forgotten. Hidden. And now that I've seen the cracks, I can't unsee them. I sit there until the lamp grows dim, until the night outside leans close to the window, like it's listening. My hands tremble over the empty folder. Why would my own sister keep something like this from me? And more importantly, what is she afraid I'll find? I knew the office would smell the same before I even stepped inside. Old paper, stale carpet, and something like dust settling on forgotten promises. The hallway lights hummed overhead, the kind of soft electrical hum that makes every step feel louder than it should. My hand hesitated on the doorknob longer than I care to admit, as if the truth could slip away if I rushed toward it. When the door finally creaked open, the room looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd grown since the last time I stood here, a grieving daughter trusting strangers to tell her what her father left behind. The blinds were half drawn, sending pale stripes of winter light across the desk where Mr. Harlan sat, his glasses balanced low on his nose. He didn't look up at first. He just kept flipping through forms like the past was a stack of papers he'd forgotten to file. "Mara," he said after a moment, his voice thinner than I recalled. "It's been a long time." Something in the way he said it made my skin prickle. Not warmth. Not welcome. More like caution. I sat down across from him, smoothing my hands over my jeans, trying to steady the breath that already felt too tight. "I need to ask you something," I said softly. His eyes finally lifted. Something flickered there, recognition, maybe regret, or fear. I couldn't quite place it. "It's about my father. About the estate." I watched the color drain slightly from his face. He leaned back, clasping his hands together like he needed to keep them steady. "I see," he murmured, and the air shifted between us. Outside, a car passed by, its engine a low rumble that faded too quickly, leaving the office too quiet again. I folded my hands in my lap. "My sister mentioned something," I continued. "A trust fund. With my name on it." His reaction was immediate, sharp enough to cut the silence clean in two. His shoulders stiffened. His eyes darted, not to me, but to the file cabinets behind him. Tall metal, locked. As though something inside them had just knocked to be acknowledged. "I don't know what she told you," he said slowly. "But these matters were handled years ago." "That's not what I asked," I whispered. He didn't answer. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A faint tapping sound started, his finger against the desk, barely audible but frantic enough to betray the calm he tried to wear. "Was there a trust fund?" I asked. He swallowed. Hard. His Adam's apple bobbed in his throat like he'd just forced down something sharp. "There was," he finally admitted, the words dragged out like they fought him on the way out. "But your sister, she was the executor. She handled the disbursement." I felt my stomach twist, not from shock but from confirmation. Something in me had already known. "Handled it how?" I pressed, leaning forward just slightly. His eyes moved again, cabinet, like he needed permission from something locked away before he spoke another word. "That's all I can say," he murmured.
His voice had changed. Softer.
Lower. And trembling. I let the silence stretch, waiting, hoping he might fill it with the truth. But he only took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, breathing like a man who'd been carrying the weight of a secret for too long. "Mr. Harlan," I said gently, "if something was done without my consent, if something was hidden, I need to know." "You do," he said quietly.
"Not you should know.
Not you deserve to know. You do know. As in, deep down, I already understand." He looked older than he had minutes earlier, smaller, worn down, like the truth had been eroding him grain by grain. His hands shook when he reached for his pen, not to write anything but just to hold on to something. "Lillian managed everything after your father passed," he said. "She insisted." Insisted. Not requested. Not discussed. Insisted. "And you let her?" My voice was soft, not angry, just tired.
He winced.
The situation was complicated. Complicated how? Another glance to the cabinet. This time longer.
Heavy.
As if the truth lived inside those cold metal drawers, begging to be let out. "I'm bound by legal confidentiality," he whispered. I can't disclose details that involve another client." "But it was my trust," I said. His breath caught, not loud, just enough to see his chest tighten like something inside him was breaking free of its restraint. "I wish things had been different," he murmured. "Your father," he intended better. The room felt colder. My fingers curled around the fabric of my coat sleeve. "What did my sister do?" I asked, each word slow, fragile. He didn't answer. His silence felt louder than any confession. He set the pen down. His hands wouldn't stop shaking now. They trembled like fragile leaves caught in wind they weren't made to withstand. "Mara, if I tell you anything, I could lose my license," he said, voice trembling. "But if I say nothing, I lose much more." He looked up at me then, really looked, like a man who'd been holding his breath for years, waiting for someone brave enough to ask the questions I was finally asking. "You're not wrong to wonder," he said. "You're not imagining the gaps in your history. And you're not the first person your sister has persuaded to stay quiet." My heart thudded painfully. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He shut his eyes. "I can't say." The way he said it chilled me. Not won't say.
Can't.
His fear seeped into the room, thick and suffocating. The locked cabinets behind him loomed like sentinels guarding a truth so dangerous, even he wouldn't touch it with bare hands. In that moment, I realized he wasn't protecting himself.
He was protecting me.
The air felt too heavy to breathe. "If you look in the right places," he said softly, "the truth has a way of finding you." I stood slowly, legs unsteady beneath me. He watched me with eyes full of apology and something else I couldn't name. Something like warning. At the door, I paused. "Why are you afraid of her?" I asked. He didn't answer. His silence felt louder than any confession. He set the pen down. His hands wouldn't stop shaking now. They trembled like fragile leaves caught in wind they weren't made to withstand. "Mara, if I tell you anything, I could lose my license," he said, voice trembling. "But if I say nothing, I lose much more." He looked up at me then, really looked, like a man who'd been holding his breath for years, waiting for someone brave enough to ask the questions I was finally asking. "You're not wrong to wonder," he said. "You're not imagining the gaps in your history. And you're not the first person your sister has persuaded to stay quiet." My heart thudded painfully. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He shut his eyes. "I can't say." The way he said it chilled me. Not won't say.
Can't.
His fear seeped into the room, thick and suffocating. The locked cabinets behind him loomed like sentinels guarding a truth so dangerous, even he wouldn't touch it with bare hands. In that moment, I realized he wasn't protecting himself.
He was protecting me.
The air felt too heavy to breathe. "If you look in the right places," he said softly, "the truth has a way of finding you." I stood slowly, legs unsteady beneath me. He watched me with eyes full of apology and something else I couldn't name. Something like warning. At the door, I paused. "Why are you afraid of her?" I asked. "I find the trust documents next, pages listing assets, timelines, allocations. My name appears again and again, tied to numbers that never reached me. Decisions supposedly made in mutual agreement. My approval marked by that unfamiliar loop of a forged signature. At the bottom of the stack lies a letter, one I've never seen. One written in my father's handwriting. Except not exactly. The slant is off. The spacing inconsistent. A few letters shaped too carefully. Someone trying too hard to be him. I read it anyway, even as nausea rises in my stomach. "Mara has agreed to let Lillian handle all distributions," it says. "She trusts her sister completely." My heart stumbles. I can almost hear Lillian's voice, polished and patient, explaining things the way she always did, slowly, gently, just enough to make me doubt myself if I questioned her. But this wasn't guidance. This wasn't protection. This was a theft disguised as family duty. The pages blur. I blink hard, forcing them back into focus. I never agreed to any of this. I whisper that truth into the stillness of the records room, just to hear it out loud. It hangs there, heavy and trembling, like the ceiling might buckle under its weight. My hands are cold now, fingertips numb as I turn to the last section of the file, financial reports. Money moved in quiet lines, signatures approving every transaction. My signature, not mine. The stairs groan under my weight, each step a slow, grieving sound that sinks into the house's bones. I feel the cold creeping in as I climb, a stillness hanging in the air like something watching, waiting. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretches out in front of me, long, dim, lined with framed photos of family moments that were never as happy as they look. Lillian always knew how to arrange a lie into something beautiful. I walk past them, each frame glinting under the soft hallway lights. My footsteps are soft, but my heartbeat roars in my ears. At the far end of the hall sits a door I've never seen before. Dark wood, heavy, undecorated. A metal lock glints at the center, like an eye. The housekeeper called at the office. My pulse stutters. For all the years I've known her, all the times I've walked these halls, Lillian has never once mentioned this room. Never invited me here. Never even hinted it existed. I stand in front of it, the air colder on this end of the hall, as if the house knows what I'm about to touch. My fingers hover over the doorknob. Behind the door, I hear movement. A drawer sliding shut. Paper rustling. Someone breathing slowly. Too slowly, as if trying to quiet the sound of their own presence. I swallow hard. Lillian? My voice barely rises above a whisper. Silence answers. Then another click. A lock being secured. She's inside. She knows I'm here. She's choosing not to open the door. The air thickens, heavy with everything she isn't saying. Everything she's hiding. Everything she's meticulously kept tucked away behind money, behind charm, behind that immaculate smile she wears like armor. I stare at the locked door, the grain of the wood blurry from the sting building in my eyes. What truth could be so dangerous that she'd rather bury herself behind a lock than face me? The hallway hums with quiet tension, each second stretching, pulling, tightening around my ribs. I reach for the knob again, not to open it, I know it won't, but to feel its cold metal under my palm. To remind myself this door, this lie, this distance is real. Downstairs, the housekeeper calls my name softly, her voice small and trembling. I stand alone in the hall, facing the locked door, feeling the weight of years pressed down like a hand on my shoulder. Whatever waits on the other side isn't just a secret. It's the part of our past she never intended for me to find. And as I turn away, one thought digs into me like a thorn. If she's guarding that room this tightly, what has my sister been keeping from me all these years? The moment Lillian steps outside to take her call, the air in the house shifts. Like something loosens its grip on the walls. Like a hand unclenches. I stand in the foyer, pretending to admire the framed family portrait she hung after our father died. The one where she insisted I smile wider, sit straighter, be presentable. But my eyes aren't really on it. They're fixed on the staircase behind me. My heart thuds in a slow, aching rhythm, each beat syncing with the soft closing of the patio door. Only then do I let out the breath I've been holding. This is my chance. I don't run. Running would make noise, but each step feels like it's carrying me towards something I've been meant to see for years. The banister is cool beneath my fingers. My legs tremble, a mix of dread and something sharper, something like purpose. Upstairs, the hallway lights cast long shadows. The locked door, her precious, forbidden room, sits at the far end like a secret waiting to exhale. My pulse quickens. I'm certain it'll be locked again, that I've come all this way only to find a barrier between me and the truth. But when I touch the knob, the metal is warm. And it turns. She forgot. In her rush, in her panic over that phone call, she forgot. The door swings open with a soft sigh. Inside, the room is dim, lit only by a small desk lamp angled toward a pile of papers. The air smells like old ink and something metallic, like a place where numbers have been twisted into stories they were never meant to tell. I step in slowly, afraid to disturb the stillness. A desk sits in the center, buried under papers, folders, and thick ledgers with worn edges. The room is nothing like the rest of the house. No expensive paintings. No curated decor. No attempt at beauty. Just secrets. I move closer. The first ledger opens easily under my hand, its spine already cracked from use. The pages are filled with neat rows of numbers, deposits, withdrawals, investments. Then my name, written again and again in the margins, crossed out once, rewritten darker the next time, as if someone needed to remind themselves how it was spelled. My throat tightens. The trust existed. Not a rumor. Not a misunderstanding. A reality. I flip another page. There it is again, Mara Lawson, typed in columns, highlighted in yellow, circled in red pen. But beside every deposit meant for me, another column shows money leaving. Sometimes within hours. Sometimes the same minute. Transfer. 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 My stomach drops. The numbers blur, then sharpen again in cruel clarity.
500,000.
Maybe more. But where did it go? My hand drifts to a stack of envelopes tied together with silk ribbon. Each is stamped with the logo of the same bank our father trusted. Each addressed to me. Each unopened. My fingers shake as I untie the ribbon, the soft whisper of fabric unraveling sounding too loud in this silent room. Inside the first envelope is a letter from the bank, dated years ago. Notification of available distribution, beneficiary rights. Your trustee has authorized representation on your behalf. Representation.
Trustee.
My eyes sting. I was represented by someone I never asked to speak for me. Someone who made decisions in my name. Someone who lived in this house. A floorboard behind me creaks. For a moment, I freeze, convinced Lillian is at the doorway. But the house holds steady, silent, as if it wants me to keep going. I reach for the next envelope. This one is thinner. Inside, a single sheet of paper, my signature scrawled at the bottom in a shape that looks almost right but leans left, just slightly. A flaw I would never make. It hits me with a cold, electric clarity.
Forgery.
Her handwriting sits underneath, faintly visible where it pressed too hard onto the desk. She practiced.
She traced.
She learned how to become my hand. I flipped the paper over, breath trembling. More documents. More signatures. More lies wearing my name like a stolen code. Some dated when I was abroad. Some notarized by people I've never met. Some so old the ink is fading. Years of deception tucked behind a locked door. My hand clamps onto the edge of the desk to keep myself steady. What was she thinking when she sat here? Did she convince herself she had the right? Did she whisper excuses into the quiet until they sounded like truths? I sift deeper through the mess, ledger after ledger, folder after folder. And then I see it. A page labeled, Trust Fund, Balance Report. The number beside it makes my vision blur. 0. The trust fund didn't disappear. It didn't get lost. It was drained. Slowly. Deliberately. Over years. Every withdrawal is signed with my forged name. Every approval marked by a trustee who wasn't me. And every trail leads back to this room. A chill runs down my spine, the kind that feels like a hand brushing between your shoulder blades. I hear something again. Footsteps on the patio. A voice, Lillian's, sharp, clipped, impatient. The kind she uses when she's arranging her face into something civilized. She's coming back. I stand in the middle of the room. The truth spread before me like a wound. The lamp hums softly, casting light across the ledgers, as if they're confessing under interrogation. My pulse is loud in my ears. I should leave. I should run. I should pretend I never saw any of this. But something roots me to the floor. A thought I've avoided for years finds its way to the surface, cold and steady. She didn't protect me.
She didn't guide me.
She didn't manage things out of love. She took what was mine. And she buried the evidence behind a locked door. Downstairs, the front door shuts. Lillian's heels tap against the marble tiles, measured, confident, unhurried. The sound grows louder, moving closer. I step back from the desk, my breath shallow, eyes locked on the papers that have rewritten everything I thought I knew about my family. The footsteps reach the bottom of the stairs. My hand slips from the ledger. Whatever happens next, whatever comes when Lillian sees this door open and knows what I've found, there's no going back. Because some doors don't just hide secrets. Some doors change the person who walks through them. The moment her silhouette fills the doorway, the air in the office seems to freeze. Lillian doesn't speak at first. She just stands there, her hand still gripping the doorframe as if she needs it to stay upright. The soft light from the hallway outlines her figure, but her face is shadowed, unreadable. I close the ledger in front of me slowly, the paper whispering against itself. My pulse stutters. I half expect her to shout, or demand an explanation, or storm across the room like she used to when we were children, and she caught me somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. But she doesn't move. She only says my name. Quiet. Flat. Mara. The floor creaks beneath her heel as she steps into the room. The sound feels wrong here, like this room has lived untouched for too long to remember footsteps. I swallow hard. You didn't want me to see this. Her eyes flick to the piles of papers, the signatures, the ledgers. Her jaw tightens. For a moment, she closes her eyes as if bracing herself against a truth she always feared would walk out into the light. When she opens them again, something in her gaze has hardened. Not anger. Not even irritation. Something colder. She moves toward the desk, each step measured, careful. You shouldn't have come up here, she murmurs. You don't understand what any of this means. I understand enough, I say, though my voice wavers. The trust fund existed. It grew. And then it disappeared. She doesn't deny it. Instead, she exhales a slow, trembling breath. It wasn't like that, Mara. I didn't steal from you. I borrowed. For you. The words feel rehearsed, like she's practiced them for years. Her fingers brush lightly against a stack of envelopes, then she pulls her hand back fast, as though the paper burned her. For me? My voice echoes faintly off the walls.
School. Rent.
Emergencies. That's what you want me to believe. She lifts her chin. Yes. The numbers don't match, I whisper. Not even close. Silence threads through the room again, the kind that presses against your ribs. She doesn't look at the papers. She doesn't look at the signatures or the dates. She looks only at me, and not with the certainty of someone defending herself. With the terror of someone cornered. Her hands shake almost imperceptibly. I did it to protect you. Protect me from what? I ask, my voice barely more than breath. Her lips part, but she doesn't speak. Instead, she reaches for the back of a chair as if she needs something to hold on to. The lamplight catches the faint sheen in her eyes, but she brushes it away before it can form into anything vulnerable. Mara, you were struggling. You always have. I stepped in where I had to. You stepped over me, I say softly. You stepped over my rights, my choices, my future. She flinches. For a moment, she folds her arms tightly across her chest, the way she used to when she was younger, when she lied, when she was scared, when she needed the world to think she was stronger than she felt. It wasn't supposed to be this way, she murmurs, voice cracking on the edges. I kept the account safe. I kept everything balanced. I meant to tell you eventually. Eventually? I step closer, gently pushing back one of the ledgers toward her. Lillian, this wasn't pennies. This wasn't a loan. This was my life. Her breath catches the way someone's does when a truth finally suffocates them. It wasn't, she starts, then falters. You don't know what I had to handle after Dad died. You were falling apart. I was falling apart. And the world didn't stop long enough for us to fix anything. I soften. Despite everything, I soften. Because buried under her defensive tone, there's something jagged and human. Something raw. Then talk to me, I say. Tell me why my name is written everywhere in here. Why you were terrified I'd open this door. Why you drained something that wasn't yours. Her fingers curl into fists. You always think the worst of me, she whispers. Even now. Then prove me wrong. She meets my eyes, and for the first time, she doesn't look like the sister who always had the answers. She looks like someone standing on a cliff's edge, afraid of how far down the fall really is. Her voice barely rises above a whisper. I didn't take it for me. Something cracks open inside my chest. Then who? Her throat bobs. Her gaze drops to the floor, as if the truth lies there, tangled in the boards. She opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. There were things you didn't know. Things Dad didn't want you to know. I had to make choices. Hard ones. That's not an answer. A tear finally escapes down her cheek, slipping past every layer of control she's held for so long. She doesn't wipe it away. I was scared, she admits, voice trembling. Not of you. Of what would happen if you found out. I thought I could fix everything before you ever had to see it. And did you? I ask. She shakes her head slowly.
No.
I made it worse. The admission hangs between us, fragile and heavy. Outside, a breeze pushes against the shutters, the soft rattle breaking the stillness like a warning. Upstairs, the house seems to hold its breath. I look at her, really look at her. The polished exterior she presents to the world is gone. What's left is a woman unraveling, a woman whose fear is bigger than her mistakes. Lillian, I whisper, what are you so afraid of? She meets my gaze, eyes wide, haunted. And for the first time since I stepped into this room, I realize she isn't afraid of being caught. She's afraid of what comes next. Before she can speak, the hallway light flickers. A soft pulse like the house is preparing itself. She turns her head slightly, listening to something I can't hear. Maybe her own heartbeat. Maybe footsteps on the stairs. Maybe the weight of the truth finally climbing toward the surface. When she looks back at me, her voice is barely a breath. If I tell you everything, you won't look at me the same. I exhale slowly, feeling the tremor in my own hands. Maybe not, I say. But lying hasn't saved you either. The house settles. A quiet shift.
A sigh.
Lillian steps back from the desk, her expression slipping into something small and frightened, something I've never seen in her before. And in the thick, heavy silence that follows, one truth rises between us. Whatever she says next will change everything. The truth doesn't come to me all at once. It arrives in pieces, the way morning light slips through a half-closed curtain, slow, hesitant, almost apologetic. First, a name on a bank statement that shouldn't be there. Then, a list of payments that don't make sense. And finally, a set of debts so large they swallow the page whole. Lillian's debts. Paid with my inheritance. Every last dollar. I sit at my kitchen table long after the sun has fallen, the papers spread across the wood like fragments of a life I didn't know I was living. The refrigerator hums in the corner. The clock ticks too loudly. Somewhere outside, a dog barks, startled by the night. I try to imagine Lillian saying the words out loud. I can't. Morning arrives, but nothing feels new. The sky is gray, the kind that makes the whole world feel tired. I drive to her mansion on autopilot, my fingers cold around the steering wheel, my breath fogging the windshield. It feels like going to a funeral I wasn't warned about, but part of me suspects the burial already happened years ago. When her front door opens, she looks surprised to see me. Not guilty. Not defensive. Just tired. Her silk robe hangs loose around her shoulders, and for the first time, she looks small inside this house she always insisted was too big for anyone else to understand. The floor creaks when she steps back to let me inside. It's a soft sound, but it feels like the house finally exhaling a truth it's held too long. We need to talk, I say. She nods once, slow, like her body already knows the weight of the conversation she's about to carry. We walk into the living room, the one she keeps spotless for guests who never come. The curtains are drawn halfway, letting in thin stripes of cold light that fall across her face, cutting it into pieces. I sit. She doesn't. Why didn't you tell me? My voice is low, steady. I didn't expect it to be steady. She doesn't answer immediately. Her hands tremble as she folds them in front of her. Tell you what. I slide the stack of documents onto the table between us. The pages rustle, sharp as knives. That you weren't rich, I say. That you were drowning. And that you paid off everything using my money. The words land in the room like stones dropped in water, quiet at first, then rippling outward until the silence trembles. Lillian closes her eyes, and for a moment, I think she might lie again. I see her gather the breath to do it, the way she always has, but when she opens her eyes, something inside her seems to crack. She sinks onto the couch across from me. I didn't think you'd ever know, she whispers. That's the point, isn't it? Her shoulders fold inward, the way someone folds into themselves when they've run out of excuses. I wasn't stealing, she murmurs. I was borrowing. I was going to put it back.
How?
I ask. With what money? Her lips tremble. I had plans. You always have plans, I say softly. And I'm always the one left standing in the dark. The light shifts, moving across her face like the day is trying to decide whether to soften her or expose her. She looks at me then, really looks, and the fear in her eyes is nothing like guilt. It's older.
Deeper.
Mara, I thought I was protecting you. I almost laugh. From what? From my own father's love? From my future? No, she says quickly, her voice cracking. From me. The sentence hangs between us, trembling. She leans forward, elbows on her knees, fingers pressed to her temples. After Dad died, everything fell apart. I didn't know how to live without him making the decisions. You were grieving and you trusted so easily. You believed in things. I didn't. That doesn't give you the right. I know. Her whisper slices through mine. I know. But you were always softer. And I was always afraid. Afraid of what? She lifts her head slowly. Her eyes glisten, and for the first time, I see not the sister who always stood taller than me, but a woman trembling under the weight of her own choices. Afraid of losing you. The words hit harder than anything else she could have said. She stands, pacing to the window, pulling the curtain open just enough to let the gray morning spill across the room. You never saw it, she says. You never saw how Dad looked at you. You were his heart. You were the one he believed in. And I. Her voice fails. I swallow. So, you punish me because you felt second? I punish myself, she says, turning back toward me. Every day. Every bill I paid with that money felt like another reminder that I wasn't enough. So I told myself it was temporary. That if I fixed my mistakes, if I cleaned up the mess before you knew, I could still be the sister you thought I was. You drained $500,000, I whisper. That's not cleaning up a mess. That's burying one. Her face crumples, the way paper does when it's been folded too many times. I didn't think you'd forgive me, she says. So, I thought maybe you didn't have to know. There it is, the truth wrapped inside the lie. The easy choice. The quiet betrayal. I stand slowly. My hands feel cold, empty. You should have told me. She nods, tears finally slipping free. I know. You let me struggle, I say. You let me doubt myself. You let me think I was the problem. I thought I could fix it, she repeats, voice breaking completely now. I thought if I just had more time. Time for what, Lillian? I ask. To become someone you weren't? To become someone he would have loved more? The question hangs raw between us. She sinks onto the couch again, covering her face with her hands. The room feels smaller now, heavier, as if the house itself has been holding its breath for years. I watch her. This sister who lied. This sister who broke. This sister who, in some twisted, desperate way, thought she was saving me by destroying what belonged to me. My heart aches. Not with anger. With mourning. Because I'm realizing now that I didn't just lose a trust fund. I lost a version of her. And maybe she lost a version of herself too. When she finally lifts her gaze to mine, her voice is barely more than breath. Can you forgive me? I inhale slowly, the air shaking in my chest. I don't answer, not because I don't know, but because forgiveness isn't a word you speak. It's something you grow into. And I'm not there yet. The silence stretches, fragile and full. Outside, a bird lands on the railing, shaking rain from its wings. The sky brightens just a little, like the day is trying to decide if it should break open or heal. I turn toward the door. Behind me, Lillian whispers, "What happens now?" The truth is, I don't know. So I leave her with the only honest answer I have. That depends on what you tell me next. The letter is thin.
Old.
The kind of paper that feels like it might sigh apart if I breathe too hard on it. I sit in the quiet corner of the bank's lobby, the safe deposit box still open behind me. Dust floats in the gold light from a single high window, drifting the way memories do. Soft, slow, heavy with things you forgot you were carrying. My father's handwriting curls across the page, steady but softened by time. I trace the first line with my eyes, afraid to touch it. Afraid it might disappear if I do. My dear Mara. The words tilt, the ink slightly smudged at the edges. He must have written it quickly, or maybe with hands that already knew they didn't have many more days left. I feel the floor shift underneath me, not literally, but in that quiet emotional way where the world suddenly doesn't feel like the same place you woke up in. The letter smells faintly of cedar. He always kept his papers in a cedar drawer. I blink hard once, clearing the blur from my eyes, and begin reading. He tells me he set up the trust because he wanted me to live without fear, to stand taller than the shadows of our family, to have choices he never had, and a life he hoped I'd be brave enough to build. He says he worried about Lillian, worried she would try to guide me too strongly, then too tightly, then too completely. My father writes that control can look like love if you're not careful, and that rewriting someone's life often begins with rewriting small details, a suggestion here, a correction there, until you can't remember where your thoughts end and someone else's begin. My throat tightens. I read the line again. Don't let your sister rewrite your life, sweetheart. I love her, but I know her. I know her fear. And fear, when it mixes with love, can become something dangerous. The words ripple through me. Dangerous. A word I never dared to link with my sister. My eyes move to the next paragraph. The ink thins, as if he was running out of strength. Please remember who you are, even if others forget. And please take care of each other when I'm gone. Especially your sister. She'll need love more than she'll ever admit. I suck in a shaky breath. There it is, the contradiction my father carried with him. Protecting me from her. Asking me to care for her. Knowing she could wound me and knowing she couldn't help it. A tear falls before I can stop it. It blurs the word love until it bleeds into the fibers. The bank is silent except for the distant hum of fluorescent lights. But in my head, I can hear my father's voice, warm, tugging at the corners of every memory I have of him. A voice that still had hope for us, even with one foot already on the other side of goodbye. I close the letter gently, afraid of creasing it. It already spent too many years waiting to speak. My reflection stares back at me from the polished metal door of the box, eyes tired, cheeks blotched with the kind of crying you don't prepare for. I barely recognize myself. Maybe because I'm seeing the truth too clearly now. My father trusted me. He believed in me. And he worried about her. All the pieces fall together in a way that makes my stomach twist. The missing documents. The forged signatures. The way she always insisted she knew best. The way she tightened her grip every time I tried to step out on my own. And now this letter, his last attempt to stop what he feared would happen. The betrayal is sharper when it comes from someone you spent years calling your compass. I tuck the letter against my chest as if it might keep my ribs from cracking open. The paper is fragile, but the truth is not. I close the deposit box, the metallic click echoing across the room like a quiet ending. But it's not an ending. I drive home with the letter in the passenger seat, the sky outside sliding toward dusk. Colors fade into a muted blue-gray, the same shade of the sweater my father used to wear on cold evenings. The memory wraps around me, both warm and unbearably soft. At a stoplight, I whisper his name, just to hear how it sounds in the air. When I get home, I sit on the couch without turning on the lights. The house feels different now, smaller but also strangely safer, as if the walls know I finally heard something I needed to hear long ago. I open the letter again, letting the paper settle in my lap like a sleeping bird. Why did Lillian ignore this? Why didn't she honor the one request he seemed terrified to leave unspoken? The wind rattles the window pane, reminding me of being a child, when storms sounded like giants stamping through the backyard, and Lillian always told me to hide under the covers. She held my hand then. When did it change? When did protection become control? When did love become something sharp? I think of her face earlier, the fear in it, the way her eyes flickered like someone bracing for a verdict. Was she terrified of losing me? Terrified of being exposed? Or terrified of seeing who she had become? My fingers trace the last line of the letter. You deserve a life that is yours, Mara. Don't let anyone take that from you. Not even your sister. A quiet, trembling breath escapes me. I close the letter slowly. I know what I have to do now. Not because I want revenge. Not because I want to punish her, but because truth, once spoken, doesn't go back to sleep. I stand, the weight settling in my spine. The room feels both hollow and full. Hollow with the years I lost, full with the clarity I've gained. Tomorrow I will face her again. Not as the younger sister shaped by her shadows. Not as someone afraid of rocking the boat she built. But as the daughter of a man who prayed I'd find my own path. I hold the letter to my heart one last time before slipping it into a drawer. The night deepens outside. And in the quiet, one question keeps circling me. Soft, persistent, unescapable. If she ignored a dying father's final wish, what else has she been willing to ignore? I never realized how loud silence could be until I stood in the hallway of Lillian's house, my coat still hanging from one arm, the truth sitting heavy against my ribs like a heartbeat I didn't want to hear. She stands across from me now, her shoulders pulled in, her eyes swollen in a way she can't hide fast enough. "Just give me time," she whispers. The words drift in the space between us, soft as dust, fragile as old thread. They catch on the light filtering through the tall windows, thin winter light, the kind that feels colder than the air. I don't answer. Not yet. My fingers tighten around the envelope in my hand, the one with my father's handwriting, the one that shifted the ground under my feet. The paper inside feels warmer than it should, as if the truth carries its own kind of fever. Lillian steps closer, but her voice doesn't follow. She's trembling slightly, like a person trying to stand still on a shaking bridge. I realize I've seen this before. When we were kids. When she'd hide behind me during storms and pretend she wasn't scared. But now I'm the storm. And she's the one asking for shelter. I sit down on the edge of her velvet sofa, the cushions sinking slightly under me. She stays standing, arms wrapped around her body like she's trying to hold herself together. The room feels too clean, too curated, color-matched pillows, polished floors, everything placed with an obsessive need for control. It hits me suddenly that maybe this house isn't luxury. Maybe it's armor. My whole life, I say quietly, you told me things to protect me. Or at least, that's what you said. She swallows hard, her chin trembling. I did protect you. No, I say, shaking my head. You managed me. Her breath catches, just faintly, just enough to crack through the mask she's worn for so many years. Outside, a branch scrapes against the window, its shadow flickering across the wall like a reminder of something trying to get in. She finally sits, across from me, but far enough that the distance feels intentional. Her hands twist in her lap. Mara, I didn't want to lose you. You didn't lose me, I whisper. You controlled me. She closes her eyes. A single tear escapes from beneath one eyelid, sliding down a cheek that rarely lets itself be bare. My debts, she says, voice trembling, weren't supposed to touch the trust. I told myself I'd put it all back before you ever knew. I told myself I was keeping you safe from making the wrong choices. The wrong choices? My voice isn't angry. It's tired. Or choices you couldn't control? Her shoulders collapse a little more. I was drowning, she murmurs. Drowning and nobody saw it. You never let anyone look. A long, quiet breath fills the space between us. She curls inward, as if bracing for the next wave. I watch her, not as the woman she tries to be, but as the child I once knew. The one who always needed more than she could ask for. The one who carried fear like a second heartbeat. And suddenly, I understand something I never did before. She didn't take the money because she wanted power. She took it because she was terrified of losing control. And terrified of being seen without it. Still, terrified or not, she broke me in places I didn't even know were cracking. I looked down at the envelope again. My father's last words echoing through me. Don't let your sister rewrite your life. The warning feels heavier now, threaded with a tenderness he must have carried for both of us. Lillian, I say softly, this wasn't just money. She flinches as if struck. It was years of choices. I continue. Years of me thinking I was less than I was. Years of trusting you when you weren't honest with me. She lifts her face. I know. The words crack in the middle. I know. And I hate myself for it. For the first time, her mask falls completely. Her eyes shine not with guilt, but fear. Fear of losing what little connection we still have. I'm your sister, she whispers. Your only sister. Please don't take that away from me. I close my eyes. I see flashes. Her braiding my hair when we were young, her teaching me how to tie my shoes, her sitting beside me at our father's funeral, squeezing my hand with a grip that said she needed me more than she knew how to admit. But I also see the forged signatures, the missing years, the decisions made without me, the quiet betrayal stitched between our days. I'm standing at a crossroads. I say slowly, one path is the lawyer's office. The other is whatever we can salvage from this. Her breath stops entirely. And which one will you choose? She asks, voice barely a whisper. I look at her, really look. Her fear, her shame, her desperation to be forgiven, not because she deserves it, but because she doesn't know who she is without me. And I feel something inside me bend, not break. Just bend, like a door not ready to close, but not fully open either. I don't know. I say honestly. The words hang there, soft, steady, frightening in their truth. She presses trembling fingers to her lips. Please let me make it right. How long? I ask quietly. Have you been scared I'd leave you? She looks down at her hands. Since the day you were born. It's such a strange answer that it steals the air from my lungs. Because I suddenly hear our father's voice again, telling me she carries a fear she'll never say aloud. The little girl inside her didn't disappear. She just learned how to hide. The room feels different now, less like a battleground, more like a confession booth. I exhale slowly. Understanding, I whisper, is not the same as forgiveness. I know, she says, and her voice breaks completely. We sit there in the quiet, the weight of everything unsaid draped between us like an old quilt. Outside, the sky shifts into evening, soft blue fading into a deeper gray. The house feels colder, yet somehow more honest. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. Just tell me there's still a chance, she whispers. I look at her, really look. The tiredness in her face, the sorrow in her voice. The sister she was, the sister she became, the sister she's asking to be now. A chance, I say softly. Maybe. Her breath shudders out in relief. Maybe is enough. But it's not enough. Not really. Not for what comes next. I stand, the envelope pressed to my heart. As I walk toward the door, I glance back at her, a woman sitting alone in her perfect, breaking world. And the question follows me out into the cool evening air, quiet as a shadow. Can understanding exist without forgiveness? And can forgiveness grow in soil this damaged? The morning I made my decision, the world was strangely still. Not peaceful, just paused. Like the air was holding its breath, waiting to see which version of myself would step out the door. Light leaked through the blinds in thin, trembling lines. Dust floated in the beams like slow-moving constellations. My paperwork, my father's letter, the bank forms, the copies of forged signatures, sat on the table like witnesses who had finally spoken. For the first time in a long time, I felt the room wasn't spinning me. I was the one standing steady. A slow breath, a steadier heartbeat, and something inside me, something tired and bruised and quiet, finally whispered, enough. I gathered the documents into a folder. The edges were crisp, cold. There was no triumph in the gesture, no fire, no rush, just clarity.
Thin, soft,
Sharp enough to cut through years. When I reached Lillian's house, the sky hung low and gray, as if it understood what kind of day it was. The mansion looked different now, not grand, not impressive. Just big, empty, full of things that had never belonged to her. The door opened before I knocked. She stood there, hair uncombed, eyes swollen, wearing a sweater I remembered from her college years, the one she kept but never wore. Her bravado was gone. Her shoulders were small. Her voice, when she said my name, was thin as paper. Mara, I stepped inside. The warmth felt artificial, like the house was trying too hard to be something it wasn't. She led me to the living room, but she didn't sit. She hovered, like someone afraid to collapse. Or afraid of what would happen if she stopped moving. I set the folder down on the glass coffee table. The soft thud echoed around the room, louder than it should have been. I'm claiming what's mine, I said quietly. She flinched, just a little, just enough to reveal the crack in her composure. This isn't revenge, I added. I'm not here to punish you. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She pressed her fingers to her mouth as if holding something in, guilt, fear, regret, I don't know. I'm doing this, I said, because my life is mine. And it always should have been. She sank into a chair, her knees folding like she couldn't trust them anymore. You don't understand, she whispered. I never meant to take it from you. I didn't answer. I just watched her. This woman who raised herself on control, now small without it. She looked around the room with slow, haunted eyes. I thought I could fix it before you ever found out. I thought if you saw me as someone who had everything together, maybe you'd feel safe. Maybe you'd depend on me. Her voice wavered. I didn't want you to leave me behind. My chest tightened, not with sympathy, not with anger, but with an old ache I didn't realize still lived inside me. You didn't have to steal from me, I said softly. You just had to trust me. Her eyes glistened. She nodded, but she didn't look up. I'm sorry, she whispered, again and again, the words fluttering out like moths too weak to fly. I didn't reach for her. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I stood. The folder stayed on the table, an anchor between us, or a boundary, or both. She stared at it as if it might disappear if she blinked quickly enough. What happens now? She asked, voice raw. I shook my head. I don't know. I wasn't lying. The truth stretched out in front of us like a road with no signs, no markings, just the faint impression of footsteps that might be ours. I walked toward the door, and she didn't follow. Didn't beg. Didn't make promises she couldn't keep. Maybe she finally understood that this wasn't a moment she could shape to her will. At the threshold, I paused, not out of hesitation, but reflection. The house felt like an echo chamber of all the versions of us that broke along the way. I turned back slowly. She sat motionless, one hand covering her mouth, the other gripping the arm of the chair as though holding herself in place. Her eyes finally lifted to mine. In them, I saw the little girl who used to braid my hair on school mornings, and the teenager who stayed up all night studying so she wouldn't fall behind, and the young woman who tried so hard to be strong that she forgot how to be honest. It struck me, sudden, heavy, that her mistakes weren't born of malice. They were born of fear. Fear that the world wouldn't catch her if she slipped. Fear that I wouldn't either. Lillian, I said quietly. Her breath broke into a silent sob. I'm not erasing you from my life, I continued. But things will change. They have to. She nodded, her shoulders shaking once. She didn't ask for forgiveness.
She knew better now.
I opened the door. Cool air brushed against my face, carrying the faint smell of rain from somewhere far off. The sky had darkened, but the world didn't look bleak, just different. Just honest. As I stepped outside, I felt the weight of years lift, slowly, cautiously, like a door easing open after being stuck too long. At the walkway, I stopped. Behind me, the house stood still, watching. Inside it, my sister sat alone with the truth, the real truth for the first time. I didn't turn around again, but I felt something shift, something small and complicated and uncertain. Was I walking toward an ending? Or stepping into a beginning we hadn't learned how to name? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe this was the moment where healing starts demanding the hardest things. Distance, honesty, space to grow into someone new. I took another step. Then another. The world felt wider than it had in years. Open.
Real.
And as the wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain, a quiet question settled in my chest, soft, steady, impossible to ignore. Can a bond survive when the truth was buried under money and lies, And is it worth saving if it breaks us to uncover it?